Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a great afternoon. It is, I don't know, 6:30 or so, Thursday, November 1st, and I am going to do something a little bit different today. I hope this goes well. I gave a presentation in New Hampshire at the AT Makers Fair up there uh, last month, and it was about how to engage your local high school STEM and robotics team in AT. And I was asked afterwards if I could make a recorded version of that. So I thought about doing that today, and I decided I'm going to do it live. Why not? It is, generally speaking, more forgiving. You guys forgive us for lots more uhs and unedited content. And it's something that I think that if I do it live, I'll keep it short and try and get through this as quickly as possible, which will probably make it more enjoyable for all of you. So for those of you who are wondering about the audience, this really isn't for the makers of the world out there. You guys kind of get it, or you wouldn't be reading this group. This is more people who are AT providers or parents or AT users who want to reach out to their high school STEM program to get some support, get them engaged, and may not know how to take the first steps. So I gave this presentation. It was very well received, and hopefully I will do a decent job of it live here now. I do have to keep it short. I have to get out of here in about a half an hour. So I had an hour to present, but I took questions and everything else, so we should be good. If you do have questions, type them and I'll answer them. And unless they're urgent, I will probably wait until the end. So let's get started. How to engage your high school STEM and robotics team. So this, like I said, was originally given in September at UNH. And we started with a discussion about this team right here. So this is one of our poster childs of how to do this well. The kids at Penn High School in Indiana deserve a ton of credit for taking this on and just absolutely embracing the concept of doing AT in as part of their outreach program. The young woman there on the right is Italia Fields. She's probably the person that I think best exemplifies one student really getting behind this. And we'll talk about her more in a second. What the first thing we did with Penn was to actually support Ella Hunt, who we're going to talk about here in a minute. But what's important to note is I picked a team who is already a successful team. They already had won chairman's awards. They had already been competitive at a state level. They were well organized, and they already had their act together. And so that existed before I ever got involved with them. And it's something I'm going to show you how to find a team like that in a few minutes. This is without a doubt my favorite picture of all of my high school kids' pictures. And it shows a lot of different things happening that happen when you do this correctly. The first is obviously there's a young woman here in this wheelchair. Ella Hunt has SMA, really is limited to just moving her hands in terms of motor mobility. She's getting some back because of Spinraza, but generally speaking, she is severely limited by spinal muscular atrophy. The person over here to her right is her mom and her physical therapist. So they are both engaged directly with the high school team in getting this working. And the main point of this picture for me is Italia. So Italia right here is doing something you're not going to see a lot of kids do in high school. She's playing tag with a little girl in a power chair. And she's doing it for two reasons. She's doing it because they're trying to work out the switch interface that we have on there and the tracks. You can see they've actually made tracks to hold Ella's arms in. And she needs to move around to make sure she can do this well, to see if there's adjustments that can be made. But more importantly, she's having fun. She's having fun and she's playing a game with a little girl who probably doesn't do a lot of tag. It is great for Ella, little girl in the wheelchair, but it's also great for Italia. I don't think she would disagree with me when I say she's probably going to be a better person when she graduates high school, having come in direct contact with people with profound physical needs. It will make her problems seem smaller. Other interesting thing is to look in the back. This is also important. There's two of her classmates are in the back here. I actually don't know both of their names. But one of them is taking pictures to put it on Facebook. And that will come up in our conversation in a few minutes. as well. All right, I'm going to show the AT Makers process here. I also noticed that I probably have never gone through this on the group. It's probably worth going through. It shows how Ella's mom found us and got involved, and I think it's probably worth going through. A lot of people are used to getting AT through traditional assistive technology process, where you've got to do a efficacy study and you've got to get the documentation and find out what's proven. This is a much more organic process that we try to foster here. It starts with somebody who's kind of screwed. They have a problem. They don't know how to solve it. In this case, Ella's mom's problem was she wanted Ella to be able to drive her power chair. And she was told by the mobility company that that couldn't happen unless Ella had 3 access points. So a switch for forward, left, and right. And that's a wrong answer. Right? It's a wrong answer. There's lots of people out there in the AT world who said, oh, we've got lots of other answers. But it is what she was told, and it had stopped her from being able to get Ella to do this. And she did what most of us do when we're screwed nowadays. I used to ask this question, what do you do when you have a problem you can't solve? And people would say, Google it. And that used to be true, but I don't think we Google things as much anymore. What we do more of right now is we complain about them on social media. We post our comment to Facebook. In this case, Ella's mom, Erica, posted to an SMA support group, spinal muscular atrophy support group, and said, I have a daughter who wants to be able to control her power chair. She only has 2 switches. What can I do? And there was a guy out there named Jonathan Lasko who had solved this problem in the virtual sense. He had made a switch interface for his son to drive a power chair in Second Life and had made that work. He also knew AT Makers and brought it to us. And we found him local engineering resources. We're going to come back to this step in a minute. But those engineering resources were the robotics team. And they were able to craft something, going back and forth with Ella and Erica. They were able to craft a solution that worked for her. And I flew up and we did all kinds of crazy stuff to make this work. But we solved a problem for her. And then she went back on social media again and said, hey, look, this worked. It fed back to the SMA community that there were these resources and this process could work. And the next time somebody is screwed in a similar way, they will go and find this solution because it's well documented online. Now, lots of you are probably going, but that doesn't work. It breaks down. It absolutely breaks down. It breaks down because we do not have local makers. We do not have local engineering support who can make a custom solution and get this done for them. So that's what AT Makers is trying to solve. It's what this presentation's about. It's about how do you actually engage the local maker groups. So I made a mind map. I actually wanted to get everything that I know about this process of how to work with a STEM program out there. I made a mind map of it. It's available on the Facebook group. You can just screenshot it here. But I'm going to walk through these concepts and these thoughts very quickly and kind of get you up to speed on what I know about this. It's not complete. It's just what's in my head when I was asked to talk about it. All right, first step is, what do they offer? It's important that the AT community understands what these groups offer and what they don't, where the boundaries are on this. But the number one thing they offer you is local engineering resources. It's not the only thing, but they offer this in terms of 3D printing, in terms of electronics, custom electronics, soldering up a PCB board, adapting a toy, right? If you need to have, I happen to have one here, add a jack to a toy, they can absolutely do that for you. They can do much more. They can make you a switch interface or a switch, a specific switch that'll work for a particular individual. So they've got skills that are reasonably advanced. Certainly by AT standards, they're very advanced. And they are willing to help you with it. They very often have 3D printers that are sitting idle. So rather than writing a grant to get a 3D printer that your group then has to learn how to use, you're better off reaching out to the STEM program, which not only has an idle 3D printer or several of them, they've also had training on how to use them and how to make things with them. And often they are missing the need. They're missing the demand, and that's why those printers are idle. The other thing they offer that is really important is they offer structure. They are already organized. So this is not about how to start an AT STEM program. This is about how to take your existing STEM programs and robotics teams, Project Lead the Way efforts. They already are structured. So they're a member of FIRST or VEX or the UAV robotics program. They are part of Project Lead the Way, which is a national organization that includes a robotics or a STEM component to it. These groups already have the teams organized. In the case of FIRST, they are kind of a sports team. That's an all caps FIRST. That's a brand. That's not just the word FIRST. It was actually started by Dean Kamen, who's the inventor of the Segway and a lot of other AT stuff. And he has actually structured his around, or they have structured themselves around sports teams. So they've become the sports team for the kids who are more into robotics than sports. It is very well organized. It is a lot of fun. If you've never been to a robotics competition, it is absolutely worth you going to see how these kids are organized. Project Lead the Way, on the other hand, is structured as a curriculum, as a program for the school to use to structure their STEM program. Structure a lot of their things, but they have a STEM component in it. The way you talk to these folks are a little bit different. They have different motivations. I'll talk about that in a little bit. They also have a surprising amount of funding. They're not loaded or rich. I'm sure that if you ask the robotics team, do you have lots of extra funding? They'll say no. We do a lot of fundraising ourselves. But in comparison to the Assistive Technology department, they are much better funded than the AT group is in general. This is important because you don't have the extra time and effort to create this. They are already in place, and you can work with them while furthering their goals. What do they need? So that was what they have at their disposal. What do they need? The number one thing they need is they need authentic outreach. They need something that isn't contrived. It's not, starting another robotics team, which is what a lot of the outreach programs is. And it's not teaching people about robotics. Their outreach should actually impact their community, and it should actually come at it from a different angle. Let's take the skills that they're using in robotics, that they learned in robotics and they're using for their competition, and apply them in another way in the community. That is absolutely huge for them. The sports teams metaphor, the first competitions, they are actually measured on their outreach efforts. So they are measured by the impact they're having in their community. They're required to do this. And you can get to a certain level within FIRST by winning in the competitions, but at that point, to get to the A level, to be winning, you need to go beyond what's happening on the field. And that's wonderful that FIRST has included that in their outreach efforts, but it's also something that we can really leverage to make this happen. Very often, they have no clue that AT exists. They know that people use prosthetics, and that's about it. The idea of switch-adapted toys, the idea of even the fact that kids couldn't play because of their physical limitations are very foreign to them. And this is a very big thing for them to get involved in. The individual level is a little bit more specific. The high school kids, not the programs, not the high schools, but the individual kids need interaction and experience with things outside of their comfort zone and outside of their robotics team. They need this both from a tactical perspective. They need to be able to write their college applications. They need to be able to write job applications as well. They also need it at a very intrinsic level. Many of these kids haven't come in contact with people who are profoundly impacted by a disease or somebody, even an older person they're working with who's had CP their whole life. Coming in contact with them and actually being there when these solutions are delivered is really important. You see it, you see them suddenly recognize that the challenges they're facing are much more, they're going to be able to overcome them because they can compare it to the challenges that these other folks are facing. that it grows empathy. It gives them, I like to use the phrase better humans, because I think that when we come in contact with the folks that the AT department is serving, it puts things in perspective for them. And it is something that is sorely lacking in today's youth, I think. The robotics kids are great. They are probably the best, this is bias, I'm an engineer, but they're kind of the best set of teens. They're thoughtful, and many of them are brilliant. This adds a level to that I think really helps them. The last thing that they need to engage girls in STEM. And it may come across as sexist for me to say it, but it's absolutely true. They are trying to get girls involved in the robotics program. They are great engineers, right? So women who become engineers are among the best of the engineers, but they are not always motivated the same way boys are. I will tell you that is from direct experience. If you talk to Leanne from Roaring Riptide, she'll tell you that since they've added an AT aspect to their outreach, they have flipped from 60-40 boys to girls to 60-40 girls to boys. And they haven't lost any boys. What they've done is they've added girls. And it's because this is motivating for the girls. To see something where they're going outside of the competition and making an impact was a big driver for them. I have a woman on the left there that is Lamore Freed. Many of you in the AT community won't know who she is. I'm happy to say she's a friend of mine. She's a fantastic engineer. She started a company called Adafruit. She is one of the best known engineers in the world right now. And I want to show a video from her talking about the involvement of the maker community, which is something that she leads, into assistive technology. And she calls it accessible technology because she can't find the words. It's kind of funny for me to see it. But it is important that you recognize that her main driver for what she's doing isn't just to make cool stuff. She wants to get girls involved in STEM. And so for her to actually reach out to the AT community and think this is a big part, because the question that she's going to answer in a minute is, over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think is coming for the AT, for the maker community? And the first thing she thinks of is AT. So I think it's important that we get to know some of the people in that space. And I'm happy to share that video here. So I'm going to actually mute my mic and let this show for about 2 minutes.
So the question is, as a leader of the maker movement, where do you see the movement and the community kind of going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I definitely see it's not going to go away, right? So I think that, you know, it's like, I want to say like, oh, the maker movement, but it really is something that people just like to do anyways, right? Like, you don't have to tell somebody about the maker movement to have them be really excited about Minecraft or building robots or rockets or, you know, like decking out their skateboard or making wearable fashion. Like, people like to make stuff, right? Like, that's kind of how we got here. Like, humans got here because humans like to make things and be creative and like create technology. So I definitely think more people are going to do it. I do see some really interesting things happening within the maker movement. So one is the accessibility and oh, hold on, I have a problem. Like accessibility technology. So accessibility technology, like this is an early demo. This is a 3D printed prosthetic. So, you know, there's a lot of people in the maker community, like AT makers and other groups that work with kids or even adults that have special needs, or they need, you know, prosthetics or electronics or hardware to help them with their day-to-day lives. And, you know, when, if you're someone who needs special hardware and you don't have that skill set, it can be very, very expensive and challenging to get that stuff made for you. But there's people in the maker community who are like, oh, you know, you just need a really big button that sends a keyboard press to your iPad, and there's just nothing on earth that does that. And so, like, I'll make that for you. And so the ability to custom make hardware, and that ties together with open source hardware, right? If it isn't open source, it's not possible to do. So having open source hardware and have it be easy for people to customize it has allowed the accessible technology community really mesh well with the maker community, which I think is very interesting.
So hopefully that worked and you guys were able to hear her okay, and that went through. I think that we are right at the edge of my live broadcasting ability, by the way. I think that the fact that somebody like Limor is driving this and is consciously, for example, the other day or a couple weeks ago, she came out with a sip and puff sensor because she thinks maker-made sip and puff devices are on the horizon. Things like that are important for us to be aware of, and it's important for us to try to support what they need. She is trying to get more women into STEM and engineering, and that's something that we can absolutely help with. All right, so how do you start? How do you find a team you're going to work with? Well, the first thing you should probably do is look at your people that you know. Look at your family members. Look at the people you know who are in the high school, STEM programs. Your district knows who the big robotics teams are. But if you're not an AT in a school district, or if you're a parent, there are certainly ways that you can find the right team. One, ask us, askatmakers.org. We are always happy to help you find somebody. But I'm going to show you here what I do when people ask me to help them find a STEM program. And it's not that complicated. There's a search tool that will let you do this. And first, at least, makes this pretty darn easy. So let me come on over here. All right, so this right here is a search form. Oops, sorry. This right here is a search form that will let you search for a team, a robotics team in your area. The reason this form exists is they want teens who are looking for a team to be able to find something to join or to work with, but it's really great for us to find it. It's under firstinspires.org. There's a link that I'll include. It's in the presentation, but I'll include it underneath the video here. When you go there, it's got the 4 different levels, the Lego League Junior, the Lego League, the First Tech Challenge, and the First Robotics Competition. For our needs, we're probably going to start with the older ones, that's age 12 and higher. If you've got a choice, the FRC teams are usually more advanced, but either one can do the technology that we need. You go and you type in the zip code. This is the zip code where Ella lived. And when you type it in, it will show you all of the teams near where you are. So you'll type in 46514. It then shows you, it will usually come up by name. It shows you the teams that are within 25 miles of the zip code that you searched for, okay? You can say 10 if you want to narrow it down, but 25 is usually a good region. They can usually support people within that area. When it comes up, you'll see there's a First Tech Challenge team here named Binary Bots and things like that. I will recommend that you sort this by number. It's here, it's easy, and what it does is the lower the number, the longer the team has been in first. So start with the oldest team. These are teams who already have the structure in place. They generally have been going to competitions. They're doing well, or they wouldn't have stayed in the area so long, or in first so long. And now they're probably looking for more of an outreach effort to take it to the next level. In my case, I started with Team 135. That is an insanely low number. They are the 135th out of 6,000 or some crazy number of teams that exist now. So start with the lowest numbers, click here. It will tell you a lot of information about the team. It tells you where they are. They're at Penn High School. It tells you who their sponsors are, what corporate sponsors they have, where they're located, when they joined, which was 1998, which I think is like one of the first few years. It also tells you what they've won. So you want to look for a team that has some awards. They've won, in this case, a Dean's List Finalist Award, a Chairman's Award. That is the outreach program we're going to talk about. This is a team that obviously is well structured. Very often they'll have a link here. I think they did when I looked at it. They'll have a link to their site. But if they don't, you can usually type in team and then their team number. And if you do, you'll end up on their team site. So do a search on Google for Team 135 and you'll get Team 135. It will show you their website. They'll always have something where they're showing off what they're doing. In this case, if you look now, Penn Robotics will actually have a section about what we're doing, which they're calling Mission to Engineer. But there is a way to contact them. You can go directly here, or if you just go to About Us, it will tell you a little bit about their program. And very often they'll tell you exactly what you need, which is who you need to contact. In this case, Jim Langfelt is talked about here about the fact that he started this program. He is the person I reached out to when I emailed and called them. I explained to him what we were trying to do, and he has been a fantastic partner for us in the Indiana area. So when I am asked to help people find a STEM program, this is the process I take. And sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 attempts to find a team that responds, that wants to work with us. But it is certainly something that the AT community can and probably should do some of this on their own. Okay? So that is kind of how we do it. If you can't find somebody, if you don't know how to get this conversation started, we can actually, I've made a lot of video calls where the other people are the AT coordinator and the STEM club coordinator from the same district. And all I'm really doing is making the introduction. And we are always happy to do that. If I don't do it, Jonathan can do it. We can find somebody to do this to get you started. All right. So when you actually get in touch with them, how do you explain the benefits? You start with their benefits. How is this going to help their team? Know their motivators. The robotics teams, the competition teams, are going to be competing for service awards. The biggest awards in FIRST are about outreach. They are called the Chairman's Award for FRC and the Inspire Award for FTC. That's First Robotics Competition and First Tech Challenge. They will know what these are. You should know what these are. Those are the awards that they are going to, and you don't need to know the names, but you can say, we know that there are outreach awards that you compete for. We can help you with that. If it's a Project Lead the Way group that you're finding, they have things called capstone projects. These are year-long projects where the student has to work towards a goal. He's given a project, he has to solve it, an engineering challenge. He's required to work with an end user, get it ready for production. These are much more curriculum-based. And to be honest, we've just started working with Project Lead the Way. So while I'm happy to tell you that these are real things, I can't give you a lot of advice other than keep in touch with us. Next year, we are going to be much more engaged with Project Lead the Way, and we'll be better able to help you. Also, they may need mentors. They may need mentors on the AT side that can work with them as they're working on these projects. The other things you can do and say that you will help them with is tell them that you're going to track the service hours and that you'll give them a summary of the service hours at the end of the semester or whenever they need you to, so that these kids can get the credits for, in Florida, we have scholarships that require, everywhere, but there's one here called a Bright Future Scholarship that requires service hours. Tell them, we'll document the service hours by kid, and we'll provide that. Also, offer to help document the project for them. That's important, and nobody likes to document, but it is certainly something that ATs and parents can absolutely help with, and that it'll help them tremendously. Another big pro, start with a project that you know will be successful, okay? We have starter projects like home automation, toy adaptation, 3D printed mounts, 3D printed switches. These are things that we've done a lot. Take our projects, bring them to this group and say, I need 3D printed switches, or I need 3D printed switch mounts. I will tell you that this mount right here, which, let me see if I can actually show you from the overhead. No, I can't. Okay, so I'll just zoom in this way. This mount right here, which is green, so it's disappearing. Sorry. The mounts that we have for the standard AT switches are huge. They allow a standard device like a AbleNet switch, a Big Mac, a Microlight switch. It allows them to be mounted on standard camera mounts, and that is huge for the AT department. But it is really easy for the robotics teams. They have idle printers. We give them the file. They print it for you. They stick in a T-nut, and you have an easy win on your first request. That is huge. Make sure the first thing you're doing is low-hanging fruit, and they will get a success. Or find one of their peers. So if you have a student who needs something and they're in a high school that has a robotics team, introduce them. Ideally, get that peer to become a member of the robotics team. There's lots of ways they can help out, even though they're challenged with mobility or other things. But have the team helping somebody who's already in their community. That is also a great way to do a first step. Then there are a few things you really shouldn't do, and these are important. I will tell you personally, and there's a little bit of a mea culpa here. These are pitfalls that I have done, okay? I have made all of these mistakes. I have lost a year of progress with a large FTC program because I fell into these pitfalls. So please pay attention to these and learn from my mistakes. Do not make these mistakes yourselves, because it will very quickly end your relationship with the robotics program. Number one, don't conflict with their schedule. They have a specific schedule. They each, like the FTC and FRC teams, have about 6 weeks, which is called build season. They are not going to want to work with you in the middle of build season, at least not in the beginning. Until you've got a relationship with them, build season is their district. So you wouldn't go to the high school football team and ask them to build you a shelter for something in the middle of districts. They have their heads down. They're in the middle of something. It is really important that you pay attention ahead of time to where they are. If they're an FTC team, their build season is in the fall. They are not going to work with you. If they're an FRC team, their build season is in the spring. And sadly, I had this error when I gave this presentation the first time, and I'll actually fix it this time so I never make this mistake again. There you go. FRC team build season is in the spring. Come to them in the fall. Go to them now if you want to talk about this. The second is to ignore why they exist. And this seems like something you would never do, but it is really easy to do. I have done it. It is why I lost a year working with a program. Do not assume that AT needs are more important than the needs that they're already addressing. It's easy to look at a competition and think, you know what, Ella's being able to speak, Ella's ability to drive a power chair is more important than what they're doing on the field. But that's not why they exist. These STEM programs exist for STEM. It is important that we start there and bring things to them for them to help with, and not go in and say, listen, this robotic stuff is great. And this is my quote, right? This stuff's great, but it's not real. Don't say it's not real. Don't say this is more important. Don't say it's more meaningful. You might believe that. And even if you're right, it doesn't matter. It's going to trivialize the reason that they originally existed. They want to bring STEM to their students. Okay? It's not more or less important than AT, so don't make on that it is. And really, you need to actually recognize that what they're doing is as important to them as what you are doing is to you, and welcome it. Go to the robotics meet. You're going to learn a ton when you go to the robotics meet, and you're going to see something that will absolutely shock you. You're going to see the atmosphere of a basketball game or a football game around something that the robotics team built and is now competing with. It's not something you're ever going to expect when you get there, okay? Bring your AT users, right? Coordinate with them first. Make sure that there's going to be ramps. Don't get there and find out that they didn't. Don't make them look bad. But by all means, bring your AT users to the events. Absolutely, that is critically important that you recognize that what they're doing is important. There's another one that isn't here. There's another slide that I removed. There it is. Sorry. That says, don't forget they are teens. There's a lot of things to that. There's a couple big ones that are important. They are going to need rewards on their own terms. Everybody needs their own payment. They need their own recognition. And in the case of teens, it comes down to let them do something important, right? Recognize that it's important. Thank them, okay? Make sure they're involved in the delivery of the devices that they create to their end users. And then do silly things like let them push out the pictures. Seems minor, but in today's day and age, you need to get media releases for these teens. And if there's a reason you can't, that's fine. But you need to explain that to them because they want to not only help, they want to be able to brag about the fact that they're doing something wonderful. So get media releases. Make sure that they know these are the pictures that you can and can't share. They'll obey them. They'll absolutely obey them. But this is a reward to them to be able to put the pictures on their robotics website, showing them work with your users. Again, if you can't, that doesn't mean they're not going to work with you, but make sure you make the attempt. Recognize that it is a very real need of theirs, a desire of theirs, and try to reward it. Finally, there are things that they are going to do that you need to tell them they can't stop, okay? If they start a project, explain to them that starting a project and dropping it is worse for you than not starting. If they start the project, they might get in over their heads. They might need to reach out for help. Let them know that that it is completely acceptable for them to get into that state. It is not okay for them to drop this. If they take on helping another person, they have to follow through. Okay, at least while they're in school, while they're working with you, they have to follow through. And then there are things that you do not want. You do not want them doing things that might be dangerous to the recipient. That doesn't mean you don't reach out to the maker community for that. You can reach out to me. In the case of Ella, I made the chair, the controller for the chair. The teens made the handhold, the hand positioning. They made a lot of things for her, and they supported her, and they helped me push out updates to the chair. But don't expect the kids to do things like don't expect a leg prosthesis, because that's mobility and they'll fall and they'll hurt themselves, whereas a hand prosthesis is probably much more doable. So think about that as you go forward. And number one, don't forget to thank them. It is easy for us to think, oh, they love this stuff, they're helping out, but consciously thank them and let them understand how important their contribution is to what you're doing. All right, last slide, last step here. Please reach out to your local STEM program. If you need help, reach out to us on Facebook or on atmakers.org. And lastly, and I always say this, please raise your expectation of your AT at least as high as your consumer technology. When you talk to these teens, they will be asking you a question like, wait, this is not high tech. Why are you still stuck here? That's because their expectation is that of consumer technology. They've been in the world where Moore's Law has made things better every year, and they will be surprised to hear that you are not. So recognize that they will be surprised by this. I get a lot of teens who say, why aren't the grown-ups fixing this? The answer is, right now, a lot of these STEM programs are the best chance you have for a successful outcome. Let them know that. Tell them that. They'll appreciate it. I hope this has been helpful, and I appreciate you guys who've stayed. A couple of you stayed with me the whole time. I went a little bit over my half hour, but I hope this is worth it. And I will edit this down a little bit and push it out as well. So thanks. Have a great night. Bye.